I'm Steve Fisher, and you know what? My story is all about Alberta and the communities here, but I just left Alberta. I moved to Vancouver recently, but my daughter and I are back visiting, and this is part of our visit, and what a wonderful part of that. So I'm very thankful and grateful to be here, and we're still not sure where we call home. Oh man, I'm getting teary-eyed. I can't believe that happened. Veteran. But I'm a user experience designer and for the web. And what does that mean? It means I'm probably the biggest nerd in this room. But really what it means, like, it is about making something better in my mind. I think that user experience design is altruistic. You know, I'm hopeful that what I do makes the world a better place. And if I could give you a little example of what user experience design might be like, in my house, it's a two-story in Vancouver, and you come up, and there's this open railing at the top, so I can kind of see down the stairs. And at one point, one night, I thought, oh, I could get down the stairs a lot quicker if that railing wasn't there. Just a fleeting thought, you know, goes through my mind. And then it occurred to me how dangerous that was, and had imagery of all that. At some point, someone built the first stairs, or saw stairs, and then someone said, that's not safe. I'm going to help people get up the stairs. I'm going to put a railing in. So basically what I do is I put railings on websites. Okay, that was a failed joke. But the best description I've seen for it is from my friend Karen McGrain, and her bio on Twitter is this. I'm going to read it to you. On a good day, I make the web more awesome. On a bad day, I just make it suck less. So, open source. What is that? How many of you think that you use open source on a daily basis? Be honest. You know what? I'm betting that all of you in some way at least have used open source. There's a good chance that all of you have used an open source project that maybe I've been a part of, or that someone that you know has been a part of. The open source way is more than a development model. Like sometimes people think about it like there's open source software, and there's things like Mozilla's Firefox. It's a web browser that you can use instead of Internet Explorer, which is a good decision, actually. But it's more than a development model. It defines the characteristics of a culture. You know, there's so much to be learned about the open source way. It's about possibility. Open source presents a new way to solve old problems. To share ideas and effort. It opens doors. So it's not a new thing. You know, open source offers a new perspective, though. Open, not closed. You know, collaboration, not isolation. Here's a little secret about me. I don't believe in competition. I know that it's real. I know it's a real thing. But to be honest, if you were to ask me any given day what is going to come up with a better solution, it's going to be collaboration. I really believe that. I may not be right every time, but I really do believe that. You know, it multiplies knowledge. Even if you don't agree with someone's idea, our ideas matter. Effort, inspiration, creativity, innovation, all these things happen through open source. The impact is exponential. So essentially, this is my idea, and it's too important for me to not share with the world. As opposed to, this is my idea, I'm keeping it to myself. And we've talked about that, we heard about vulnerability. Well, there's an important part to being vulnerable. I think, though, that it comes down to a motivation thing. So a lot of people are really up on open source right now. In fact, when I started a company that I had here in Alberta, people that I would go to pitch projects to, they didn't really like the idea of open source. They felt it wasn't safe. They thought, I need to use something proprietary, like a Microsoft product or something like that. And they worked. And we worked with them. But it's kind of flipped around right now, where I think it's 1/3 of the US federal sites are all on open source software now, including whitehouse.gov. You know, some big, powerful sites are running open source software, and it's become like this magic pixie dust, fairy dust that you can sprinkle on things to say, it's almost like your carbon offset, to say, I'm just going to buy something that's going to make the world a better place. Well, it's not just that. There's a motivation behind it, too. Daniel Pink talks about motivation in his book Drive. He talks about motivation 1.0, which essentially is saying that we need to survive. You know, we have to eat, we have to mate, we have to have a place to live, water, sleep, all these things. Very simple. Those drive us. We've got to find those things. Motivation 2.0 is essentially what we're really used to. It's the carrot and the stick. It's saying, if you do this, I will give you that. and if you don't do it, I'll give you this. There's a punishment to it. And I don't know about you, but that's not good enough for me anymore. I don't think it ever was, to be honest. I'm not motivated that way. I lose interest very easily. So Daniel talks about motivation 3.0, which is intrinsic motivation versus the extrinsic, the forces around me. It's saying, I want to do something that matters, that comes from my heart, that's going to change the things around me, that I'll continue to do whether you pay me or not. But too often we're stuck in this, the motivation 2.0. It's not that I'm lazy, it's just that I don't care. So, like I said, most people that I've talked with in the past don't necessarily believe that open source is a viable or even safe alternative to proprietary options. I'm going to give you an example, and I'm going to talk about a really geeky community, to be honest, and I don't mind talking about that. I'm kind of proud of that, but how our way of working can change your way of working, your way of living, perhaps, if you're not used to that, and can be applied to all sorts of our community life. So let's take yourselves back to if you can, if you're old enough to do this. If not, just imagine. To 1993, 94, 95, Microsoft came out with something called Windows 95. I gotta tell you, it's kind of obvious that I like Apple products. Not necessarily open, but I love them. But at the time, Windows 95 was the bomb. It was awesome. I was so excited about it. And this thing called Microsoft Encarta was going to come with it, where I could have the encyclopedia on my computer, And I remember, I may still have that disc. I was so excited about it, and it came on multiple discs, then multiple CDs, then DVDs. Eventually, it was online, right? But if I were to tell you back then that there was a competitor that would be just a bunch of volunteers working up against this multi-billion-dollar corporation that had all these paid staffers working on this, but this volunteer organization that was online, on the web, could compete, I think you would have just looked at me and said, no, they can't. That's not possible. Microsoft is going to crush them like they crush everyone else. So we've got Microsoft Encarta, right? Sort of talked about this. It consisted of more than 62,000 articles. There were some really great things here. Multiple DVDs came out. Eventually, it was online. This is sourced from Wikipedia. Wikipedia, on the other hand, volunteer-based, over 18 million articles and growing, multiple languages, written collaboratively by volunteers around the world, edited by anyone with access to the site. And it's the largest and most popular general reference on the internet. And there's been some testing lately that shows that it is actually far more accurate than printed encyclopedias now. Not every page of it, though, but the fact that it can be updated daily, minute by minute. Although I've seen some Justin Bieber fans take a swipe at it. By the way, MSN.com is ranked number 9, Wikipedia is ranked number 7. For you to really understand open source from my perspective, though, we need to see my journey into this, okay? So I lived in central Alberta. I moved here from Calgary and planned to be here for 1 to 2 years. I lived here for 11 years. I loved it that much. But for me, when I started my creative company, I actually found myself in a bit of isolation. It almost felt like a wasteland, even though I loved where I lived. I loved what I did. I had trouble connecting to the creative community. And then, so I'm on my own. I'm feeling good about my business, little resources to lie on, though. And all of a sudden, my clients are wanting more and more and more. And I'm in this isolation. What am I going to do? Poor Steve. So I'm wondering about this, and then my friend and soon-to-become business partner said, I know this thing called open source. I'm not going to name the project, but he named one that actually doesn't exist anymore, and we start using it. And I thought, open source? What the heck is that? I can just use it for free? So I did. I just started consuming it. It was a bit too amazing for me, though. So I eventually dug underneath the skin of it. I dug into it and said, what is this really about? And I had my aha moment. Yeah, the community that drives open source is where it was at. It wasn't about the money. It wasn't about my business. It wasn't about what I was accomplishing. It was about what I could contribute and why they were contributing. So everything you interact with online is developed from sort of, let's say, 2 different things. I know you can do this with anything, 2 different things. One's left, one's right. But one is proprietary. So that's like Microsoft Encarta. and one is open source, which would be like Mozilla Firefox, things like that. But I'm going to talk to you about Drupal, which is a very geeky community that I belong to, so not just a little bit. But it powers millions and millions and millions of websites. I think right now it's about 3% of the web is powered by Drupal. That doesn't sound like a lot, but when you think about how many websites are out there, it's pretty amazing. So the Drupal project has thousands and thousands of contributors in it, okay? And they say they come for the code and they stay for the community. I'm like, what is that about? Well, there's lessons to be learned here from the open source community. So let's just take a look at a few of the websites. So Fast Company, FedEx, Symantec, whitehouse.gov, marthastewart.com, Visit Calgary, Concordia University in Edmonton, Bob Dylan, Grammy.com, Deuce, Ubuntu, opensource.com, Amnesty International, Oxfam Canada, Adaptive Learning Platforms, and this one too, Open Architecture Network. Another TEDster, and the TED Prize winner from 2006, Cameron Sinclair, is a co-founder of Architecture for Humanity, which is an open source project that actually has nothing to do with code. It has to do with changing people's lives. Part of their vision for that was to provide homes that were sustainable, that people could build and use, and the plans were given freely. Could you imagine if every architect we knew, and I'm not necessarily suggesting this, but if every architect we knew said, I'm going to build this building, this is really innovative, and it's going to help people, and then I'm going to give every bit of it away so that someone else can build that building again. They open sourced their knowledge so that nobody could take it and make people pay for it. They created a for-benefit thing. Clay Shirky says, civic values created by the participants, but enjoyed by society as a whole. It's not just for me. I participate in this, and then I give it away freely. So let me give you just a brief insight into the Drupal project and how someone with the right motivation can make a difference. This is the founder of Drupal. Honestly, college kid in his dorm has an idea. 10 years later, and this was in Chicago this year, well, you know you've made it if you got your face on the cover of your own magazine, you know, or if you have a life-size mascot. But it's amazing to see what one idea shared can start. So Drupal cons are these gatherings of thousands of people like me that come together for the community because of something that's being created, happening all over the world, major centers and small centers. One of the last ones I was involved with was DrupalCon Chicago, and there were about 3,100 people that attended that conference, all because of Drupal. For different reasons, though. This is one of the core maintainers, giving me a big hug as I get welcomed into it. But you notice behind me, it's actually a trade fair that's happening. There is business taking place. Open source is good for business. Open source is good for a lot of business, as it turns out. There's some of the attendees in the Natural History Museum there. And you can also be very relaxed. That was the core maintainer of the Drupal 7 project in her pajamas. You know, so what the fuck's going on? You know, how can this really be happening and coordinated? Well, let me break it down on a global scale for you. 600,000 people, 228 countries, 181 languages, one idea can become global. A kid in his college dorm had an idea, and he released it. He released it. So different than what we see with things like Facebook. Even different than what we see with Apple. And the founder of Drupal says, fostering the community is far more important than managing the code. But wait, it's about the code, right? Isn't that what we're here for? Well, our ideas matter. This is from Union Gospel Mission. I should cite that. I didn't come up with this graphic. And they had this project in downtown East Side, Vancouver, and it just took note because all of a sudden they're wanting people to share their ideas. They said, open your eyes to what's around you. Open your hands. Our ideas can benefit the world or the people next door. Open your mouth. Here's a key. You can't just sit there and do nothing. You begin to talk about it. There's this connection, this theme that we are seeing thread through all our discussions today. The world won't be better because it knows of open source or how to use it. It won't be better because it knows about open source or how to use it. There's something more. Open source isn't that magic fairy dust that you can sprinkle on the world to make it a better place. So what is the essence of open source then? I've spent all 15 minutes not telling you. Simon Sinek shared it this way in his TED Talk about the golden circle is what he called it. So we start off like this. Start with the what. 100% of us know the what, okay? We know what we're doing. We may not know it very well, but we know what we're doing, whether we're a business or just a person. Okay? Then we move in to the next level of the circle. It's the how. Most of us know the how. Some of us know how to create the what. So we can say, I am creating computer software so that people will buy it, and use it. But here's the really important part, the why. What about the why? Very few ever know this. And it's not, I'm creating computers to sell them. That's not the why, okay? If you talk about Apple computers, which is the example he gives because it's very common and easy to understand, you know what, and it may bring a tear to my eye too. I didn't know Steve Jobs, but obviously he had an impact on my career. But they would talk about, we want to be different. We want to change the world. So we're going to go about thinking about things differently. We're going to make computers that are amazing. Do you want to buy one? As opposed to, hey, we're going to make a great computer, and we're going to work hard at it. Do you want to buy one? You see, there's a difference. There's a difference when you know the why, when you can connect with it. Some people know this. I would encourage you to look at this and say, work from the inside out, the motivation 3.0, the intrinsic. Why do you do these things? Because if you don't know the why, then maybe it doesn't matter what you're doing. You don't know. So this brings us back to the extrinsic versus the intrinsic. And the question of what drives us. Is it a motivation 2.0 thing, or is it a 3.0 thing? Are we motivated by the carrot and the stick, or are we motivated by something that we want that's more than us, that we want to share, that open up? So these are just some examples. And I encourage you to find out what will your aha moment be. Will you be stuck in motivation 2.0, which, I got to admit, I get stuck there a lot. But why I've stayed involved in Drupal, in open source, in fact, really, it's not open source. It's an open life. And what I come to believe is that my idea can become global. And that's so much more important than me. Clay Shirky talks about that there are over 1 trillion hours of free time every year right now. Can you imagine how much that's going to grow? So that's free time. That's not, going to work, sleeping, all those things. So what are we going to do with that? My suggestion is we keep our ideas open and make a for-benefit future. Thank you.